Inside, Zhenya's mother, Olga Ivanova, sat on the edge of her couch, her chin in her hand and her eyes on something to her left. "What's going on?" Milly asked in Russian as soon as she entered the small bedroom. Zhenya stood in the corner, his fine skin smudged with weariness. A second uniformed man was on his knees, peering into Zhenya's wardrobe. He stood.
"Who is this?"
he said to Zhenya, next to him. Luba and Viktor Pavlovich, Zhenya's closest friend and fellow actor in the opera, sat solemnly on the bed, Luba's flaxen-haired head resting on Viktor's slim shoulders. Milly had never seen the room so crowded.
"My wife,"
Zhenya said.
"She doesn't live here, though."
Milly's legs felt weak. "What does this mean?" she asked Zhenya in English.
"An OGPU search."
He answered like the scene was just as confusing to him. His gray eyes were wide, and his blonde hair was still slicked back with the pomade he used for the stage. He looked both devastatingly handsome and fragile. Milly reached for him without moving closer, but he kept his arms hugged around his chest. "Search? What for?" Milly let her hand fall and looked around the small room again. A photograph of Zhenya and her at the dacha was pinned above the bedside table. She hadn't minded that photo as much as she usually did with pictures. In this one, her jutting chin and overbearing front teeth were muted, and she looked happy. Happy to feel Zhenya's arm around her waist and the warm sun on her hair. The paper curled up at its scalloped edges. The officer had gotten back down on his knees to search under the wardrobe, and he scowled up at her.
"Don't speak in any foreign languages. Speak in Russian."
"Her Russian isn't very good," Zhenya said, and Milly glared at him. That wasn't true. She could get by fine.
"Then she doesn't have to speak,"
the officer concluded. He pulled out a pair of shoes and shook them upside down. "Has he got a warrant?" Milly didn't bother to speak quietly, or in Russian.
"Yes, he has a warrant for me."
Zhenya's fingers tapped at his chest. That didn't make any sense. "You've seen it?"
"Yes."
Milly turned to the officer and flung the wardrobe door wide open, narrowly missing his head. "What are you looking for?" she asked in her accented Russian. He pressed his hands against a shelf and stood, then brushed his palms together.
"Guns."
He smiled. Milly almost laughed. Surely he was joking. Zhenya, her gentle opera supernumerary, with his eager smiles and graceful fingers, stockpiling guns. But the cold lead snaking through her gut reminded her that the secret police were no joke, especially not when they came after midnight. The officer closed the wardrobe door quietly, then turned toward the large green trunk wedged under the window. He lifted the latch. "That's mine!" Milly almost reached out to grab his hand, but she restrained herself. She was nervous, she knew, and when she got nervous, she grew uncontrollable. She needed to be careful. He looked at her and smiled again, and this time she noticed the sizable gap between his front teeth.
"I have a warrant."
"But that trunk's mine! You can't search my things!" His eyes narrowed.
"You are his wife. It counts."
She had nothing to hide, no guns certainly, but still, it wasn't right that this ham-handed officer with hair curling up from the top of his shirt collar could rummage through her underwear. "Don't tear those stockings," she muttered. "I only have 3 pair." He gave her a sideways look, but otherwise continued uninterrupted. To his credit, each item he removed, he replaced as carefully folded or more so as he found it. But he seemed to be inventorying her items with more attention than he paid to Zhenya's clothes. The hairs at the back of her neck prickled. Milly glanced back and forth between Viktor, slender and hunched like a willow, and Luba, stocky and straight, who sat together silently on the bed, while Zhenya stood staring out the window as if he were admiring the snowfall. The guard by the door peered into the room, but he looked bored.